Hi all, let's have a look at the FIDE World Chess Championship 2024 round 1. So Gukesh against Ding. Let's have a look at what happened here. So this is a best of 14 games match running from November the 25th, that's today at the time of this video release, to December the 13th. So it has tie breaks scheduled if necessary. So it starts off with e4 by Gukesh. We have the French defence. So this has been an opening favoured by the likes of Mikhail Botvinnik in the past, and also Victor Korchnoi, a great French defence player. Modern grandmasters like Ruse and Akobian play the French defence with great regularity. We see d4, d5, knight c3, knight f6. This is the classical variation. So it encourages white to close up the centre. And the idea is that we can hit white's centre soon at d4 with a move like c5. So classic undermining operations. f4, c5. Now knight ce2 is the Steinitz variation of the classical variation. So this is something which was kind of pioneered by Wilhelm Steinitz, the first official world chess champion. We have now knight c6, c3. So white has this space advantage, a nice looking pawn chain, but with space comes a responsibility. Can the space actually turn into weaknesses potentially? We have a5. This is a very interesting idea actually to play for a3, a kind of form pawn on the queen side, thorn, but a queen side form pawn, knight f3, a4. Now we have bishop e3. So you might ask, well, why doesn't white play a3 here? Yeah, that is possible. Let's say bishop e7, queen c2. Let's just play this out here. Black could play f6, and let's say rook d1. And black is able to play b5 because the bishop's not looking at b5. And overall, black does have a small edge actually here. If we instead replace rook d1 by e takes f6, then that lets black spring into life with knight takes f6 and the knight coming to e4 with advantage for black. So, okay, it's just allowed for black to play for a3. Bishop e3 is played, but a3 isn't played straight away. We have bishop e7. And now g4. So pawns don't go backwards. Will white regret this later? That's the thing about pawns. They're very difficult to calculate the future implications of pawn moves. We have queen a5. If black castled here, it's not that dangerous it seems. Let's say g5, b5, d takes c5, knight takes c5. This position, black is actually okay here. There's nothing too concrete coming to checkmate black in this position. It seems as though black has a small edge. So anyway, queen a5, not castling just yet. And we have bishop g2, which seems as though it might be the first small inaccuracy. And these small inaccuracies kind of build up. a3 is played now. Instead of bishop g2, yeah, there's other possibilities to leave the bishop on that diagonal. But now after a3, we see b3. C takes d4, b4. Queen c7. Knight e takes d4. Knight b6. And now white castles. Now this is actually another kind of maybe a small inaccuracy. Knight b5 does seem to give white a small edge. It is a forcing move, which does have a point to it. Maybe Gukesh felt this was pointless, but after queen d8, the idea would be bishop f1 to safeguard c4 so that there's no knight invasion into b2. That is a kind of outpost to use the b2 square here. So in this line, after bishop f1, let's say bishop d7, queen d2, white does actually have a small edge overall. And yeah, black would have to be careful. Knight c4 would be a terrible move here. Bishop takes c4, d takes, queen takes d8 check. And this is just lost for black here. Knight d6 check would be a losing position. That's overwhelming positional advantage for white, and c4 dropping off soon. And if king takes, then there's bishop b6 check. That's even worse. So yeah, it does seem as though knight b5 actually should give white a small edge. But white castled, and we get to see this knight c4 now, coming in. So the knight perhaps wants to install itself on b2. We have bishop f2, and it's also, of course, hitting e3 immediately. Bishop d7, queen e2. And now a knight exchange, which opens up the pressure against that c3 pawn, which is a backward pawn on a semi-open file. That is a structural target here. Knight b2 unveils the queen, attacking that pawn. So white defends that pawn. If rook fc1 to defend the pawn, we do have, black does have queen c4 here. Queen f3, queen d3. This position, queen takes f3, knight takes, is about even, actually. This is a way for white to just be stable in the position. It should be even with rook fc1. Okay, but queen e3 is played. Rook c8. And now rook h c1 is actually maybe a little bit of an inaccuracy. Bishop e1 here may be a safer way of playing it. Black can play h5 to try and tease the pawn forward. So the point of this would be to make sure that the f5 pawn break potential is neutralized. This would be a classic prevention method. Okay, but rook ac1 is played. We have now queen c4 with the idea, well, maybe we can get the queens off. Black can get the queens off. f5. We have queen d3, and queen e1 actually makes things worse for white. The thing is, if white plays queen f4 here, there's a great resource that black has in this position. Can you see what it is for 100 points? Yeah, black actually has g5 here. This forcing move is quite interesting. If f takes, queen takes g6, this position h5, and after g takes, queen takes, black has a significant advantage overall. Yeah, this pressure on the f file is a bit too slow with the bishop on f2. And if queen g3, yeah, we're just going to take the queens off, and this is, this is a nice advantage for black overall. This position, we've got nice pressure on c3. Yeah, so queen e1 though makes things worse. We have bishop g5, rook c2. If rook b1, bishop d2 is a bit of a pain with rook takes c3, advantage for black. So rook c2, and now guess what is played here? This is quite a forcing move. It's restricting the opponent's replies for 10 points. Yeah, it's actually rook c4 is being played. So there's an immediate threat of rook takes d4 for queen takes c2. We have h4, the bishop plays to f4. If bishop h6, g5, yeah, this isn't clever, this position, because white can actually play, rook takes b2 here. A takes and bishop takes d4. White has the big advantage here. So bishop f4, queen b1. Yeah, if rook e2, rook takes c3, big advantage for black. So queen b1 tried, rook takes c3. So yeah, it looks as though it's difficult to evict the queen. The knight on b2 is looking at d1. It's quite useful for this infiltration with the queen. We have rook takes c3, queen takes c3, f takes e6. Now, Liren goes a little bit, plays a little bit of an inaccuracy with f takes e6. It seems bishop takes e6 may be a little bit more accurate. This position, queen takes e5, and there's a kind of cautionary attitude to all this. Show me the compensation, but there isn't the glaring lines of attack to the black king yet. So, okay, there's bishop c5, but queen takes g4, and it's difficult to see concretely white's compensation. So, yeah, and if knight f5, bishop takes e5 here, this position, again, it seems as though black's able to take the material and sustain the pressure, compensation, and just be material up, basically, ready for great endgames. So f takes e6 is played, though, it's still a good position for black. We have knight e2, queen takes e5, knight takes f4, queen takes f4, queen c2, and now queen c4. So here, yeah, black wants the queens off to head for a much better endgame. Queen d2. And now, yeah, there's a temptation perhaps for some players to take on a2. This would be a total disaster move, queen takes a2. Black just safely castled. There's a point where we don't want indigestion from winning too much material. If queen takes a2, there is a case of indigestion with queen g5. If we castled here, bishop d4 is the welcoming committee for the king after castling. Queen e7, and this is leading to being checkmated. Basically, we're going to be checkmated. So black just castled. We have bishop d4, and now knight d3. Nice central knight. Queen e3. Rook takes f1. Check. And yeah, deliberately going into a self pin. So there's method to the madness here. There's a move which is the idea of this. Otherwise, it is just losing material. Can you see what it is for 10 points? It's the only move to play here. It's e5. Yeah, putting pressure on d4. If queen c1, yeah, white's just going to take on d3. So e5 is the point. We have bishop takes e5. If bishop takes d3, we get the queens off. Queen takes d4. Queens are forced off. This is just a lost endgame for white. For example, here, yeah, the king's just going to come out to c5. This would be just a cheapo if we take b7, sure, but we just ignore that. And it's absolutely a winning endgame here. The other point is, okay, let's have a quick look at this endgame again. If bishop takes h7, that is ridiculous. We're just going to trap that bishop. That would be absolutely ridiculous. So yes, bishop takes e5 is played to at least keep the queens on. But now queen takes g4 check, bishop g2. If king h1, we're just taking on e5 and we are getting the queens off with queen e4 check. So this is absolutely a winning endgame again for black. So bishop g2, we have bishop f5, bishop g3, and yeah, this is a position where, yeah, now bishop e4, it seems as though black's taking over the board after bishop e4. King h2, h6, bishop h3, queen d1. So there is actually a threat of queen h1 checkmate here. We have bishop d6, which gives the king g3. We have queen c2 check, king g3, and now daring to take on a2 now, bishop e6 check. So where would you play your king for 100 points? And which ends the game here. So we have got nasty threats, knight, queen g2, which is actually checkmate because the knight's covering f4. Yeah, we play the king to h8. If we played the king... Yeah, and actually white resigned here. If the king was played to h7, guess what white plays for 100 points? This would be a bad mistake. Yeah, white has queen takes e4 check for bishop takes a2, and that would be nasty. And it seems actually this position... Oh, pardon me. This position actually is going to head for equality. Actually, even though, yeah, because of the passed pawns, even this position, though, if it did happen, it wouldn't be a total disaster. Black could play for a draw here. This will lead to a draw, basically, this position. But it would be a terrible blunder to, blunder to a draw position. Yeah, no, king h8 is absolutely winning. We have queen g1. If the game had continued, rather, if say queen g1, queen b3 is good here. And let's say bishop f4, knight c5 check, and then we're like winning material. Now you might think, well, that's a ridiculous continuation, right? But it's really tricky here. What does white do after queen b3? Yeah, it's just a very, very difficult position. If king h2, queen b2 check, and actually we get to skewer the bishops after queen f6. One of the bishops is dropping off. So yes, so queen g1 is not doing too well. h5, there's queen g2. I mean, we are material up here, but a2, and there's no real attacking counterplay from white here. Bishop g2, we can queen, and then yeah, white's had it as well, the king safety aspect. So yeah, an interesting first World Championship game. Very interesting that this is decisive, and very interesting choice of opening with the French defence. So a favourite of Victor Korchnoi, who I've been actually studying recently, lots of French defence games in recent weeks. If you want to check out my Kingscrusher TV page, there's a course on defence and counter-attack. If you want to take up the French defence, check out my course on defence and counter-attack. So yes, it's like an absolute favourite, of past champions like Botvinnik and Korchnoi, who was like an uncrowned king of chess. He was so close to becoming world champion. So anyway, very interesting French defence game indeed, and it kind of has a Korchnoi attitude to it of like taking material and sustaining the pressure. Maybe even but there's a point where you don't take more material, because otherwise really bad things do happen. So yeah, there's that balance between taking material and making sure your king is safe enough. So that happened here, that balance. So yeah, congratulations to Ding Liren on this first win, of the match. Thanks very much. Comments, questions, likes, shares, appreciated. And please do check out my course page at kingscrusher.tv. Thanks very much.